not easy when a dark-skinned woman is blushing, really. But yeah, a lot of people say, Colin, like, what is going on, Kimberly? Like, are you on leave? I'm like, no, I'm upstairs doing, all kinds of administrative work. Like, come back to the studio and do your show. But yeah, we got something to share with you, but that's not for this hour because we've got a guest with us in the studio, and we need to get right into the discussion. And somewhere in the middle of it is a storm. Maybe in the book or the economy or something that is going on in Nigeria. But when we look at Nigeria, when we look at some of the big stories driving conversation in the country, it's usually one that, it gives you a moment to just reflect and just think about it. For example, if you're talking about things like power, you keep wondering. I mean, you grew up with Up Nepa, and then you're seeing children of this generation still saying Up Nepa. You really start to wonder what exactly is going on. Things have changed, but it still feels the same for some people who are still grappling with electricity challenge in the country. Even though we've made some little progress.
Oh, really? If you were to categorize just
I was hoping you would not ask a follow-up question.
I mean, we try to stay hopeful and all of that. So maybe I'll just toe that line and say we made some progress.
Indeed. So welcome to the show. Welcome to Hard Facts. I'm Kimberly Wachko. Do I still reel out all my OTF?
Yes,
Yoraku.
Yes.
Or Chanya, Madam Speaker, and all of that. All right, and I will be with Somi on Hard Facts today, and there's so much to look at. But on the Big Three today, we've got a very special guest who's joining us on this segment for, I think, the first time on the Big Three.
Yes, first time.
We'll be talking about his book, and we'll be talking about Nigeria, relating to some of the things they've written also in the book. We have with us in the studio Mr. Dakuku Peterside. I call him a Nigerian politician because he falls within that category, even though we can add author to his name confidently. Former Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, and also member of the House of Representatives. Former member of the House of Representatives. Let's put it that way before people start to rack their head and think, is he still there? Well, former. Is an author and has put out a book, and we're delighted to have him join us in the studio. You're welcome. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good to have you here, sir.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
And what you didn't tell them is that I brought Kimberly back to the studio.
Well.
Back to the studio. I brought Kimberly back to the studio. All my spirit brought her back to the studio.
All of the above. Well, delighted to have you in the book, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you very much.
Somi, what's it again? Walking through the storm. Leading through the storm.
In the storm.
And then the other one, you had two out.
Beneath the surface.
Beneath the surface. All right, leading in the storm and beneath the surface. Just telling a story on leadership and also contextualizing it within our country also. Talking about the storm, so we'll get to the book a bit, but this is the Big Three, and we actually look at issues happening in the country and issues that Nigerians are talking about. And one of it is on the state of the economy, so to speak.
Yes, indeed. The World Bank put out a report, Nigeria's a development report. I think they titled something along those lines, and they were talking about the reforms that this administration had put in place and how it was translating to growth, even though, just like a lot of Nigerians have said, when you look at the effect on the people, it's not necessarily making them, better off necessarily. And so they came out and they put out a very detailed report. And I didn't see a case of, from what I read in the report, it wasn't like they were outrightly, bashing the government or anything like that. They commended them on some of the good parts of it and then encouraged them to carry out some audits. I think NNPC was mentioned, one of the audits they said they should carry out. And just told them to do a sort of a very thorough work as far as their policy direction and also how it's impacting on the people. And as some people will say, is the nature of our government. They were quick to come out and reject the report, saying that it does not reflect the happenings under President Tinubu. In a statement, the special advisor to the president on media and public communication, Sunday Dare, said that the data quoted by the World Bank must be properly contextualized, noting that it was based on historical and modeled estimates rather than real-time assessments. They made reference to, I think, the 2017 global poverty benchmark, which is set at $2.15 per person per day. And if you do that, I think by their calculations and all of that, looking at the current exchange rate, what it will come to in a month is about 100,000 naira. And they said this cannot be real because our current minimum wage is set at 70,000 naira. So they didn't use actual context to rate Nigeria as far as this report is concerned. And so they rejected it outrightly. So yes.
so beyond the rejection and the contextual concerns that the government have raised, because I'm glad that you wrote leading in the storm. For the government, they will try to put out a good front and say this is what we're doing and this is not a true reflection of it. But what does it really say about the state of poverty, the reality of it for us in the country?
All right, thank you very much. It's not just about the state of poverty. The World Bank reports on Nigeria acknowledge that we've made marginal improvements in the area of economic growth. They worked with the data of 3.9% growth, which year on year compared to last year, when we had about 3.6% growth, that there's been marginal improvement. That's one. Now, two, they also acknowledge that, so apart from growth, from the perspective of GDP, that there's also been marginal improvement in our foreign reserve. I want us to follow these things logically. Now, apart from the fact that for account surplus as a country, we've also made slight improvement. However, that these data do not align with the lived realities of Nigerians. They identify the fact that, one, food inflation is real and present.
Yep.
Two, that corruption is still deep, that there's no improvement in corruption, in tackling corruption. They identify the fact that there is widespread poverty and that we still have most Nigerians living below poverty line. They also talked about structural obstacles, that have inhibited growth. One is power. The Nigerians are still dealing with the issue of power. And that our infrastructure, which is supposed to be some form of catalyst for growth, is still something we need to look at. And so they acknowledge that there's been marginal improvement in terms of data, not in the lived reality of Nigerians. I don't know why government is disputing that. They also profess solutions. I am not particularly a fan of the World Bank, but truth is universal. There's nothing any of us can do about the truth. The average Nigerian knows her experience, knows where it's pinching. Is there poverty in the land? The answer is in the affirmative. Is there hunger in the land? Are we facing the reality of food inflation? The answer is in the positive. Is corruption deepening? We know better. Do we have challenges with electricity, which will serve as catalyst for growth? It powers industries. Of course, it facilitates good healthcare, education, employment. We have acute unemployment. And so these are lived realities of the average Nigerian. We acknowledge that, yes, statistically, there's been improvement.
To a certain degree.
3.6 or 3.9% growth. We acknowledge that. We also acknowledge that inflation statistically is being tamed, not in reality. Data. You understand? Data ordinarily should give us a true reflection of what's going on. But in this case, there's a mismatch between data and our everyday experience. If you go to buy basic things, I don't think there's been a crash in prices at all.
So to speak, in a lot of areas, no.
But so that's a kind of storm and we need leaders who can think outside the box to navigate through this storm.
Do we have it at the moment, thinking through this? Because it's one thing to want to defend and say, okay, this is what we're doing. Your figure, whatever indices you use, is inaccurate compared to the reality that we have on the side of the government. But you also want to look at and interrogate if the government is putting also the required commensurate measures to, closing this gap, the economic gap, the poverty gap, because the government believes it's doing so much on that front.
All right. So if you want to address issues, the first thing is to acknowledge reality. That's the first step. Now, the next thing is to contextualize your reality. The third is to look at all the options. Then look at the short and long-term impact of each of the options and choose the best course forward. That's what anybody expects. But at the foundation, we're not getting it right. At the foundation, we're saying there are no challenges. The economy is improving. We don't have structural problems. Public debt is high, but it's not.
Connection established.
This is Nigeria Info.
Nigeria Info.
This is Nigeria Info.
Nigeria Info.
This is Nigeria Info.
Nigeria Info.
Somi here. That's SOMI short for Apena Somi. The OTF is in the studio.
Yes, I am, and we've got Honorable Dakuku Peterside with us in the studio on the Big Three, looking at some of the big stories driving conversation. Went through the story of the World Bank versus the response by the presidency. This World Bank's poverty report doesn't reflect happening under Tinubu, but does it reflect happening under Nigerians? I mean, where would Nigerians pitch their tent? Do you think they will agree with the government or with the World Bank at this point in time? Well, as guest says, the reality for the people is a lot different, perhaps, from what the government and how they see it. On paper, technicalities of it looks brilliant, but for the average Nigerian on the streets, nothing much has changed, apparently.
I'm curious to find out, sir, before we move on from this story, in their response, federal government's response and their rejection of the report, they made mention of the national social investment programs as measures that they have on ground to combat poverty in Nigeria. They talked about everything, plus the Renewed Hope Ward Development Program. They mentioned the numbers, how many people it's impacting, about 8,809 electoral wards, providing micro infrastructure and social services at the community level, alongside all those other things. I'm just curious, do you think that this is going to get us out of, or at least above the poverty line anytime soon? These social investment programs, conditional cash transfers and the likes that the federal government is using to defend why this report is not the reaction or reflection of Nigeria.
All right, there are three things we need to be mindful of, in any program. there is the input part of the program. So what kind of money we are investing in a program? There's just output, and there's outcome. I think the government is more concerned with the input. So we have budgeted 200 billion for social
Interventions, yeah.
And so they go and they acquire the bragging right that we have invested 200 billion. They don't bother about the output. They may even bother about output. Truly, that these 200 billion may have been given to 200,000 Nigerians. They don't bother about the outcome. So these funds perhaps might have been released, and it simply ends in the pocket of these Nigerians, and it doesn't improve their life in any way. I don't know if you get that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And so what government needs to consider is what is the outcome of our social interventions. I don't think that they've taken time to take the metrics of outcome and whether it has led to improvement the quality of life of Nigerians. Has it led to moving people out of poverty? Now, if you look at
But is there any social intervention anywhere in the world that actually take people out of poverty? Just keep them afloat until perhaps...
Does it really keep them afloat? Now, there's the Chinese model. How did China lift 600 million people out of poverty in a decade? We have models that have worked. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel. There are other models in other countries who could replicate it with necessary adjustment and modifications. And so these social interventions are good. They are short-term measures, to address the challenges of today. But even in the mid to long term, it doesn't help in any way. There are necessary structures that we must have in place to actually lift people out of poverty. But I'm afraid more Nigerians are going down the poverty line at the moment.
139 million of the world.
And I tend to agree with the data. That 100 millions are struggling to feed daily. That's a way to get people to relate with that data. So if you say, 139 million people are technically poor, they may not understand that. But when you say 139 million Nigerians are struggling to feed, to have proper meal daily, I'm sure they can relate with that more.
Well, I don't think he quite agrees with the Bureau of Statistics report they put some time back when they put out a report around multidimensional poverty and looking at how even the middle class is shrinking.
The government's challenge is that World Bank is relying on historical data.
Okay.
That's part of the challenge. And so we're not just talking about the data of many years ago. We're saying the data plus matched with current reality is that the truth is that Nigerians are dealing with multi-dimensional poverty. There is widespread poverty, there is food inflation, there is hunger, and indeed it's affecting Nigerians, is buffeting Nigerians from all sides.
Indeed. Well, just so you know, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. Go check it out at Nigeria Info Abuja on YouTube, at Nigeria Info Abuja on Facebook. And feel free to share your messages with us on WhatsApp also, which will open up the phone lines in a bit and get your input. But let's leave Nigeria for a second and then head up to the Middle East, where we hear there's a peace deal, and saying that Nigerians are emotionally invested in what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, we talked about it
for many reasons.
Sometimes I often wonder why we get to that extent, because we throw up this conversation on radio and you can sense the emotion. I don't know if it's a therapy to just forget our own problem, just deflect from it and focus there. But we're human, so I can understand that. But yes, they're talking about the first phase of a ceasefire in progress at the moment. So may help us with
Yes, indeed. Yesterday, Israel and Hamas are said to have agreed to the first phase of the U.S. draft peace deal for Gaza and a ceasefire and the exchange of hostages. U.S. President Trump's first announced this on Truth Social, stating that both sides have signed a deal and implementation will soon begin. A word from a source from Hamas, according to another daily, said Thursday today. So we're following very closely to see if indeed it will start to happen. But should they stick with the deal this time around, it means that all the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed upon line as the first step towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. Qatar, of course, mediated in the ceasefire talks as well, and they confirmed this development, stating that the countries have reached the terms and mechanisms for adopting the first phase of the plan. I was particular about this story because, I mean, if there's anywhere where there is a storm raging right now, it is in the Middle East. I think one of the reports I was reading, the president of Israel was recommending Trump to get a Nobel Peace Prize for brokering this. I don't know just how viable that one is, but it's interesting that this is the role that he has played thus far. And right now they're at a 20-point plan that should see the ceasefire deal from the first phase all the way till the end. What are your thoughts on this, especially given that this is not the first time that they've reached a ceasefire agreement? Yes. Yes. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, we are hopeful. We can at least have some hope that it will go through this time. Both parties were on the table. I think it now boils down to if each... So I looked through, I was trying to find the 20-point plan. Perhaps we'll study it in detail so that we can understand and see if there are any loopholes, see hopefully nobody goes against it and all of that. But it would be nice to hear what your thoughts are on this.
All right. I'm happy that you acknowledge that this is not the first time they are striking a peace deal or a ceasefire deal. Historically, this matter has been on for ages. We hope that this time we'll make substantial progress. I'm not saying that we'll arrive at the end point. I just said, I chose my words, that will make substantial progress. But there's a shift in global geopolitics. If you recall, not too long ago, Britain, Canada, and many Western countries recognized the two-state solution or
recognize Palestine as a state,
Palestine as an independent state. Now, that's actually a major indicator of a global shift. Now, this shift is beginning to reflect even on the peace deal brokered by Qatar and the U.S. from a geopolitical perspective. It's beginning to reflect. Again, Israel has also realized that it cannot choose this path forever. I understand there's also a religious dimension. Some Christians believe that Israel represents the promise, whereas Palestine, for them, are the aggressors for a land that is not originally theirs. Yeah. Some Muslims also think that, every affront on Palestine is an affront on the greater Muslim. So there's a religious dimension. Now, but for Africans too, what's going on in Gaza reflects our own experience, or what's going on in Palestine reflects our own experience, where we had to deal with liberation struggle over a long time. We had the colonial masters impose their own will on us, and we're struggling to gain independence. So they see themselves in the struggle of the Palestinian people. So you can see a political dimension, a geopolitical dimension, a religious dimension, and of course, the global justice perception. Yeah. Now, but what I know is that there's a general shift, and that this peace deal reflects that shift. I think we're making progress towards finding a lasting solution to the near permanent crisis in the Middle East. However, yes, we may not have seen the details of the peace deal, but until they get to the root of the matter, they may not solve this problem.
And the root is what exactly?
And the root actually is the place of Jerusalem. And ultimately, for me, I see a two-state solution being, if it's acceptable to both sides, I think that would be, because ultimately the message is, listen, let's cohabit side by side. And I agree on how we can cohabit. And this engagement has not taken place at this level for some time. Now that is being brokered by the same. Let's not deny the fact that the U.S. provides major support system
to Israel.
And Qatar may not actually be the epicenter of Middle East.
But we know where their sympathy lies to a certain extent.
Yes, they may not be the epicenter, but they're a good facilitator. Yeah. So I'm optimistic like every other person who is studying international politics, who is studying international diplomacy. I am optimistic, And my prayer is that truly let this solution be one that will endure.
I think it's a prayer of a lot of people because 2 years into it, who would have thought?
A lot of destruction.
Yeah.
It has hurt the world in more ways than we can imagine.
Yeah.
You know, if we talk about the way it has hurt the global system, we'll not live here today.
Indeed, indeed.
I'm sure you know that the world is literally, you know, suffering some economic recession.
As a result of the conflict in the Middle East?
Trust me. You may not see all the dimensions.
I'm not seeing the dimension
Yeah.
right now, but I can understand what it means actually when a region is embroiled in an unending conflict and you have the world powers involved in it.
Unending conflict. Unfortunately, the conflict is funded from different places. It's tasking.
Indeed. All right. For every war, it takes a lot of money, actually, from Russia, Ukraine, Israel,
And so at the
Gaza,
time,
wherever it's happening.
The Russia-Ukraine war is unending too. It's taking a toll in the whole world. You know, especially the supply chain around that region.
Well, for the Middle East in particular, especially as it has to do with Israel and Hamas, I don't know, I haven't really taken a lot of time to look at previous peace deals, but this one seems a little more thoroughly thought through.
More structured.
Yeah, so the 20-point plan that was presented, Qatar was key, but then you also had countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Jordan and Pakistan, contributing to the terms of the 20-point
They've always been
proposal.
key players.
And they've always had some sympathy for the United States.
Well, in addition to the European partners, hopefully they're able to find some balance this time around because according to them, if the plan is accepted, Gaza will be de-radicalized. It will be a terror-free zone that doesn't pose a threat to its neighbors, we hope. And it will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who
And
have
that will
suffered
cost
in
a
the
lot
war.
of money.
Yes. I mean, was it going to cost any more than what Trump's initial plan was, which was to turn it into a resort? At least if it is for the people of Gaza,
huge, you know.
there is some hope
The
that they
level
can
of
agree.
destruction that has gone on, which
My
was very
God.
systematic on the part of Israel,
Oh, very
also,
systematic.
would,
Yes.
Very, very.
would set that region back a long time
Next 20 years.
to build back. So even if they get, I don't know, it's some sort of victory. I thought about it, and is it really victory for Hamas when they decided, you know what, this whole two-state solution is taking forever. Let's go into Israel. Let's do what they did on October 7th and see if it's going to change anything. I don't think it worked in their favor because at the
It
end
did
of
not
the day,
at all.
it's more devastation and more loss, sadly, for that region. And then talking about de-radicalizing the region, well, let's see how they surmount this hurdle because Hamas doesn't seem like
At all.
they're ready to bulge at this point
At
in
all.
time. I think
At
that's
all.
one.
Well, they were
part of
giving
it.
That's why the
two
fact that they've been
options.
decapacitated, they're not ready to
Yes.
budge.
They were given two options.
yes.
They were told that for those who want to still stay in the region, they have to commit to living
Peacefully with their
peacefully in coexistence. And for those who don't want to, they'll be offered safe passage out of the region into other countries that will accept them. So I think in a way, it's either you bite this one or you bite the other one. They can't still maintain
There
the
are
front
always
that they...
multiple sides. They can't be limited to the two sides that Trump is giving
Offering.
them at this point in
Oh,
time.
wow.
But we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best because, like you said, it's costing the entire world one way or the
A
other.
lot.
Yeah. All right, Abuja, feel free to join us. And, we've got a lot of comment here. But, we had to bring Honorable Dakuku to join us on the Big Three. And it would not be fair not to just touch on his book a little. I mean, the two stories we looked at reflect also some of the issues encapsulated in your book, Leading in a Storm. I want to believe for both Netanyahu, Trump, the Qatari government, the Saudis,
and the Nigerian government.
The leading in the storm.
Absolutely.
Well, it is, since we're looking, they're still, it's war of words with World Bank
Well.
as to what data they're using at this point in time. And beneath the surface, what it actually does tell the story. Is it really about leadership? I haven't been privileged to read the book, though. Is it out in the market officially?
It's not in the market officially. It's
Okay.
in the market from next week.
From
Okay.
next week.
Now, beneath the surface is a collection of 70 incisive essays written over time from 2020 to 2024, early 2024. Recall that I contribute weekly to a number of newspapers these days: Daily Independent, New Telegraph, Daily Times, Premium Times, Cable, I've mentioned New Telegraph, Daily Independent. I can go on and on. And so I contribute to those papers weekly. And so what I did was to select 70 of the most topical essays and put them together as a book beneath the surface. So it simply explains issues, beyond the headlines. So it's not just about headlines. So we address topical issues. Truly, I like you to grab a copy. One thing I know, even when I sit back and read those my interventions, I believe that if leaders take it seriously, they will have a different mindset, a different approach to governance. So that's what Beneath the Surface is all about. Then the second book, Leading in a Storm, is about 8 competencies if you want to lead in crisis. 8 competencies we must develop. I had the opportunity of coaching a number of leaders, speaking to a number of leaders and training leaders if you choose. Then ultimately I went for a program myself in Kellogg, and my professor in Kellogg said to us in class, without minding whether I'm an African or not, I said Africa is in permanent state of crisis, and that's why leadership principles that you can apply in more stable environments, if you apply it in most sub-Saharan African countries, you won't get the same results. And it set me thinking, now listen, can we find out how we can do these things better, how African leaders, can lead, using a different approach so that they can achieve better results. So I distilled 8 qualities that you need, 8 competencies rather, that you need to lead when there is high level of uncertainty, when the situation is complex, when, the environment is volatile, and very ambiguous. So I distilled those 8 qualities and try to study different African leaders who applied this principle and what kind of result did they get, and who applied it and got a different result. So whether it's understanding context of a crisis, projecting calm, or sense making, making decisions in crisis, communication in crisis, working as a team in crisis, learning in crisis, or even the different leadership styles you use during crisis. So for each one, there are enough African case studies of the kind of result they got applying themselves to these 8 competencies. So that's what the book is all about. It's actually about leading when there's high level of uncertainty, when there is volatility, complexity, and ambiguity. That's what the book is all about.
I want to believe it's not just limited to people who are leading on, the national level. I mean, a CEO, a business owner,
the
and all of that.
principles can be applied
everywhere.
In boardroom,
government
halls, market organizations or NGOs, even in the broadcasting station. The principles are the same. Now, if you look at first principle of understanding context, so I'm dealing with an issue, I need to understand the context. Projecting calm when there is storm. Whether you're in the boardroom, whether you're in the marketplace, you're the leader of a non-profit, you're a government leader. Once there is a storm, once there is a crisis, our first advice, what we found out, is that those who maintain some level of calmness, some level of confidence, are able to process information and do better.
But wouldn't it be misconstrued as being aloof? Because, there's sometimes, there was a picture of a former president one time. We're going through so much insecurity. And then the picture came out to just chill with, toothpick. It was like,
that's not being
calm in a storm. But it was...
No, now there's another dimension to it.
All right.
As a leader, people look up to you. If you panic, you're not going to process information and make the right decisions. The leader makes the ultimate decision. Everybody will make input, but the final decision is made by the leader. We are not encouraged to be reactive. We encourage to be proactive. And so when we say be calm, we're saying regulate your own self, regulate your emotions. And Mandela is a living example. Chris Hani was assassinated at a time, when they were still in transition. He wasn't president yet, but he was a leader. And the whole country went up in flames. And this man achieved calm, invited leaders of the ANC and said, can we talk? He was able to control himself, his own response, his own reaction, and got them to see things differently. and ultimately made a broadcast. He wasn't president of the country at the time. Made a broadcast, and the whole country became calm in an instant. And they were able to deploy solutions. They began the process of engagement. And there are many instances. And these things are proven.
But just to be clear, if I heard you correctly, these principles you outlined are peculiar to Africa?
Not peculiar to Africa, peculiar to wherever there's crisis.
Wherever there's crisis.
We're already saying that
but then you use African case studies.
For some cases, we dealt more with African case studies.
Okay.
So that our people can relate with it, so it's relatable.
Okay.
So if you tell them things that happen in America, they say, listen, America is relatively stable. And these principles can't apply here. And so if we tell you those who apply them in African continent, you can relate with that.
Could you share one with us? Just one.
I've just shared one now that Mandela.
Apart from
calm and Nelson Mandela.
And I can tell you about decision making. You
Okay.
know, for 10 years, we had fire outbreak in Kumasi market continuously for 10 years in Ghana. And different leaders of their firefighting institution applied different principles. They all got different results. What we realize is that leaders who had been trained, got better results. And what do I mean by having trained? They had period information, they had period knowledge. Those who didn't have period knowledge of how to apply themselves when this is. So even with decision making, if we do rational decision making, you're not going to get the right result. And rational decision making means that if an event occurs, you begin to sit down to say, okay, what happened? Okay, what are our options? What is the best decision? That's when you make that kind of decision when everything is stable. But if things are not stable, there is a combination of period knowledge, intuition. And so if you don't have that period knowledge, you can't apply yourself because you must have observed many patterns.
All right.
Model different patterns. So Kumasi market was one instance. Now, but I also share another story. Now, recall that in Nigeria at some point,
there we go.
Indomie.
Okay. I wanted the Nigerian
Recall
context.
that at some point, and in terms of communication, Indomie woke up one morning and heard that there was killer Indomie. The leaders of the United Food that were they still producing Indomie immediately knew they were in a crisis. They had reputational crisis. They had health crisis. They had crisis, on their hands. So what did they do? They simply realized that if they don't tackle this crisis, their business will go down, their reputation will go down, and so many things will go down. They tackled it head on. And what did they do? Consistent communication. They said the truth. And they applied principles of leading in crisis, deploying communication while leading in crisis. We made it clear that communication is the lifeblood, is the blood of crisis leadership.
Right.
And so the United is today, Indomie is still in the country. At the time, people avoided Indomie. They didn't want to have anything to do with Indomie.
WhatsApp went agog. All the mothers in the group were sending broadcasts.
But they were able to manage that crisis, lead in that crisis, and got results.
All right, talking with Honorable Dakuku Peterside, authored two books actually, Leading in a Storm and Beneath the Surface. You know what they say? Well, not everyone quite agree, but they will tell you leaders are born, but some of them can be made. Some
You can
people
develop
seem to have
competencies.
all of these qualities.
You can develop the
Training.
capacity, the skill, the competencies to lead.
On your own.
In
or
a storm,
through
meaning
training.
you've got to train yourself. You've got to build up yourself.
All right then. Well, let's go to the phone lines. They're buzzing already. Feedback on some of the stories that we looked at. The books are not out yet. You said they'll be out by next month.
Tuesday, the 14th of October, next week, it will be unveiled in Abuja. On the 16th, it will be unveiled in Lagos.
All right then. We'll look forward to it. Well, let's get to your feedback.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon. Family afternoon.
Welcome.
Afternoon to the guest. Prophet Michael Uchimoto is my name. The guest, I appreciate what you said by that they will get to the root before they solve the problem. What's getting to the root? Let me ask this question. Will Allah Samos continue to stand? Let's go and check where Allah Samos is standing. Will you continue to stand where this peace comes? The answer is no, solve the problem. Number 2, the 12 tribes of Israel, have they come together so as to bring about this peace? No. Yes, I must together to bring about this peace. Then alarms must come so that for Solomon's temple to be rebuilt. Now usher in second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. If it doesn't happen, I repeat, they are wasting time.
Thank you.
Prophet Michael, thank you very much. Let's hear another feedback.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome. Go ahead.
I also commend Dr. Honorable Dr. Peterside for the immense work he has done. Much very nice.
Sorry, sir. Could you speak up, please? We didn't catch what you just said. Speak up, please. Yes, go ahead.
I think the beauty of going to look at what can they reflect, what can they see, they look at what can they look at what can see on Nigeria coming out from the bed of poverty. I think it's a pretty sad one. I don't know if you can make it. It's a very pretty sad one. Because of the fact that the policy they are using is not working. They have to look at what will work for the short time and the medium time and the long time. What are the plans? Can we say, can we start the effect? Can we start how you want to say? Can you do
All right. Thank you very much. I think the audio quality is really poor. Let's run for this very, very quick break and we'll be back with more. Don't go away.
Say hello, Lagos. Hello, Port Harcourt. Hello, Abuja. This is Kids Conversations that bring family closer. From sunrise to sunset.
This is Nigeria Info.